Greetings and welcome to another Pokemon 2019 or Pokemon Journeys anime episode review. This time I'm talking about episode 106, so let's get to it. Before I get to the episode itself, however, I do wanted to point out that the opening was once again updated to include the Pokemon that Go recently caught. The Altaria that he caught in episode 105 now appears in the section that shows Go's Pokemon from the Hoenn region. If they keep this up, then they will run out of space eventually. But onto the actual episode now. Episode 106 begins with the classic intro that shows Ash and Go's dreams. However, this sequence is stopped by Jessie, who basically tells the narrator to shut up, because it is Team Rocket's time to shine. Jessie is of course breaking the fourth wall here, which is funny. And I love that the preview for this episode had Jessie, James, and Meowth replace Ash and Go in the beginning. And the title card for this episode has a Team Rocket theme, both in the preview and in the actual episode. Also, Meowth replaces Pikachu in the title card. So basically, Team Rocket hijacks this episode completely. The episode then cuts to Team Rocket's base, where they are hosting the first episode of a radio show that they call Team Rocket's Secret Kingdom Radio. I love that Wobbuffet tries to get the Rotom phone to play background music, but Rotom says that doing this is a pain, until Jessie intimidates Rotom with an expression that reminded me of the Joker. Also, I love that Wobbuffet straight up looks like a DJ here. Team Rocket soon starts their radio show, but they soon get into an argument, since Jessie wants to be the main personality, which is something James and Meowth do not agree with, since it's not what they planned. But Jessie tells them to just accept it, since with live radio shows, you should just go with the flow because you never know what will happen. The argument ends when Meowth says that they should save the argument for later. Instead, they should talk about their reason for hosting this radio show. Now, it's funny that Jessie tells James to say the reason, but before James can say anything, Jessie interrupts him and she says the reason instead, which shocks James. Jessie reveals that the reason why they are hosting a radio show is that they wanted to recruit new members for Team Rocket. Jessie then delivers a long speech about what makes Team Rocket great, while James and Meowth wonder how she can read the script they prepared so effortlessly. Meowth concludes that Jessie is just that excited about the show. Jessie concludes her speech by saying that life is short, so anyone that does not know what to do and is hesitating should just join Team Rocket. She then breaks the fourth wall again by saying that it's time for the opening. It's funny that she then says, "Ichi-ni-san, take it away." Ichi-ni-san is 1, 2, 3 in Japanese, which is the name of the opening. But the opening's title is in English, and James and Meowth do correct Jessie by telling her that it is 1, 2, 3. I love how they keep breaking the fourth wall. Also, fun fact, Team Rocket having a radio show is a reference to the fact that in real life, their voice actors did host a radio show while in character as Jessie, James, and Meowth. Said show ran from July 1st, 2012 to December 23, 2012. And it was called Team Rocket's Secret Empire. So even the name of the radio show in the anime is a reference to the real one. Also, another fun fact is that this episode was originally going to be episode 105, and so it was going to air on April 8, which was the 25th anniversary of Team Rocket's first appearance in the anime. It is unknown why this episode was changed, and it is unfortunate that this was the case, since they missed the chance to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Team Rocket's first appearance in the anime with a Team Rocket-focused episode. So after the opening, we get back to Team Rocket, who have finished their show. Jessie says that it was the best show ever while looking pretty accomplished. But James and Meowth disagree because they were unable to say much, since Jessie pretty much took over the show. Jessie says that it's not her fault. James and Meowth are to blame because they could not talk at a good rhythm. Jessie goes on to say that the essence of talking on a radio show is summoning waves in your throat and letting these waves carry your words and the feelings to the audience. Now this talk of waves in a radio show reminded me of the anime Wave Listen to Me, or Nami yo Kiite Kure, where the main character ends up hosting a late-night talk show on the radio. This was a surprisingly good anime and it made me really appreciate radio talk shows. Jessie goes on to say that since she is a good actress, she can host a radio show with ease. She then says that they should start planning their second episode. This shocks James, because he did not think that they would host another show. But Jessie says that Giovanni ordered them to. She then has Meowth read a letter from Giovanni that has said order in it. The letter simply says recruit Team Rocket members from all around the world, meaning that Giovanni did not tell them to host a radio show like Jessie said, which is of course to be expected. But Jessie says that radio is everywhere, so it is the best way to fulfill Giovanni's order. This hypes up the rest of the team, and James even says that radio does sound like their best option. Meowth then turns to Rotom, wondering how many people applied to join Team Rocket. Rotom reveals that they got 0 applications, 0 live listeners, and 0 listeners after the show. Ouch! This shocks Team Rocket and they all end up depressed. I think that anyone, myself included, that has ever tried their hand at uploading videos to YouTube or streaming on Twitch or hosting a podcast, etc., can relate to this moment because it's tough to get viewers or listeners when you're just starting out, and it can be demoralizing. But as Team Rocket will soon show, the key is to keep at it, working diligently and with passion, so that you can create the best content that you can. If you don't give up and you keep trying, pouring your heart and soul into your craft, then one day you will get the attention you deserve. So Jessie says that their unfortunate situation is just perfect, because they will make sure that their radio show becomes the best show ever, which motivates the team to give it their all. The episode then cuts to Cerise Institute, where Professor Cerise and Ren are working late into the night. Professor Cerise finishes his work, while Ren reaches a good stopping point with his work. While they both rejoice because they are done with work, Ren gets a notification on his computer. Professor Cerise wonders what the notification is for, and Ren reveals that listening to the radio is a hobby of his, and he set up this notification so that it would inform him of recommended radio shows. Professor Cerise reveals that he also used to listen to the radio, and that since the reception was bad inside his house, he would listen to the radio on the balcony, with the antenna stretched out all the way. He speaks of this fondly, and it did remind me of when back in the day, you had to play around with the antennas on both radio and the TV so that you could get some good reception on them. Oh, how times have changed. Speaking of which, Ren does tell Professor Cerise that nowadays, there are plenty of web radio shows, meaning that you can listen to them anytime and anywhere. Professor Cerise wonders if these web shows take letters and faxes from fans like the old shows did. Ren says that they generally use emails now. Professor Cerise says that this is convenient, and he says that there was something special about radio shows in the past, because you had to tune in at a certain time and on a certain day every week, so it felt like you had a special appointment with the host of the show. Now I can't really relate to this because I don't recall ever tuning in for a radio show regularly, but I do remember doing something similar, tuning in every day to watch an episode of a specific anime or cartoon on TV. I had to tune in at a certain time, on a certain channel, and sometimes on a certain day every week, which is something that you don't really need to do nowadays, with all the streaming apps we have. This episode really is packed with nostalgia for the way we got entertainment back in the day. And it's clear that the people behind this episode are fond of this and of the radio especially. Ren says that he knows what Professor Cerise means. Ren goes on to say that this is exactly why he loves live shows, because it feels like you, the listener, and the show are connected. Professor Cerise says that he wants to listen to the radio again because of Ren, and Ren encourages Professor Cerise to do so. The episode then cuts to Team Rocket, who spent the entire night working on the script for the second episode of their radio show, and they are not looking too good as a result. Which is funny, and I can relate to this situation. But they are still happy with the result, and Jessie says that their next episode will be perfect. Once it's nighttime again, Team Rocket begins their second show. They start with a new, very long intro which they deliver in unison. Jesse then opens the show revealing that they added like 2 sentences to the title of the show, which makes it way too long. Even James and Meowth are like, whoa, when are you going to stop talking? The 3 of them then introduce themselves and it's funny that they all claim to be the most important personality of the show. Jesse states their reason for hosting the show. James mentions that they made the changes to the show already, despite it only being their second episode, and Meowth says that viewers can't miss a moment of the show. They then say the intro again for some reason, and it's funny that Meowth says afterwards, let's cut to commercials, and the episode actually does cut to commercials here. The poor fourth wall is just getting demolished in this episode. After the episode resumes, we see that Team Rocket are already done with their second show, and once again they have 0 applications. Meowth concludes that they failed because their new segment, Nasty Plot Shiritori or Word Game, did not work. Jesse says that since James came up with this segment, it is his fault. But James says that they always get motivated when they play Nasty Plot Shiritori, which is why he thought that it would work for the radio show. Jesse then concludes that the title of the show is too long. Jeez, you think? They all then start brainstorming so that they can improve the show. Meowth suggests that they should add an original greeting to the show. James thinks of a new segment. Jesse says that they should have nicknames, and James reveals that he made memorabilia for viewers that send messages to the show, using his precious bottle caps. Jesse and Meowth love and approve the badges that James made, which makes James happy. James then says that he is even willing to give up his valuable and precious premiere ball if it will make the listeners happy, which the rest of the team finds touching. Jessie then says that she is now motivated and she says that they should begin their next episode planning a meeting, and the rest of the team agrees with her. The episode then cuts to Ren's house. The narrator says during the transition that after countless meetings, Team Rocket changed their radio show gradually, and they are now popular in radio fan circles as a result. Ren soon tunes in to Team Rocket's show on his computer. It turns out that Ren is tuning in for episode 56 of the show, so Team Rocket have clearly been working hard. We also learn here the changes that they made to the show. They changed their intro by making it shorter. And now they each have a nickname. Jessie is Princess Number 7, James is Mentor Blue Bruce, and Meowth is Charm Head Nosuke. They also changed the purpose of the show. They now say that they are trying to be friends with everyone in the world. They also have a bunch of new segments now, like guessing what's inside the Pelipper's mouth by touch, more Pico ASMR time, and a segment where they solve the worries of listeners that send messages to the show, which is revealed to be a popular segment. And it's also the segment that opens this current episode that Ren is watching. So Jessie reads the first letter from a listener which was sent by Daddy is a Lonely Ball Lately, who Jessie and James thank for always sending letters to the show. I was immediately like, wait, is this letter from Professor Cerise? He is a father and a doting father at that, but Chloe is sometimes not very receptive to his love, which is why he is lonely. Jessie then reads the letter which says, my daughter is giving all her attention to Pokemon and none to her daddy. How can I make her care about me again? At this point I was like, yeah, this is definitely Professor Cerise. Now James says that it is understandable that someone would give all their attention to Pokemon and that nothing can be done about this. Meowth adds that Pokemon like Eevee are really cute after all, and Jessie says that if she had an Eevee, then she would give Eevee her undivided attention. So Daddy can't compete with Eevee. This is pretty much them winking at us, the audience, telling us that yes, Daddy is a lonely ball lately is Professor Cerise, who is sad because Chloe gives all her attention to Eevee. James agrees with Jessie, but he then says that they still need to offer a solution. So Jessie has an idea. Professor Cerise, Daddy is a lonely ball lately, should learn about Pokemon for his daughter's sake. James adds that Professor Cerise, Daddy is a lonely ball lately, should just go all the way and become a Pokemon professor. And Jesse says that this is a good idea. Well, I have bad news for you guys. He is already a Pokemon professor, and still, his daughter does not give him enough attention. Also, they are again basically telling us that yes, it's Professor Cerise. It's too bad that we don't get to see Professor Cerise's reaction to this solution to his problem. Team Rocket also revealed that Professor Cerise, Daddy is a lonely ball lately, has sent 25 letters thus far. Quite the dedicated fan I see. Ren comments that this sounds like a fun show. He is soon motivated to become a hardcore fan of the show himself, and he energetically starts typing something. Team Rocket then moves on to the segment, What's Inside the Pelipper's Mouth. James is the one that must guess, while Jesse encourages the listeners to guess based on the way James, or rather, Mentor Blue Bruce reacts. So, James begins, and inside the Pelipper's mouth is a hangry Morpeko. James tries his best to guess, but he soon angers Morpeko, who bites James, ending the segment prematurely, which is funny. I love that Jesse and Meowth keep the show going by saying that the right answer was Morpeko. Did you get it right, listeners? They then move on to the Morpeko ASMR segment, where Morpeko eats something and the listeners try to guess what Morpeko is eating based on the sounds it makes, which sounds like another guessing game instead of being an actual ASMR segment. Morpeko is still biting James though, which is hilarious. However, James soon gives Morpeko a pudding a la modo. Though Morpeko ends up devouring all the puddings, much to the dismay of Jesse, Meowth, and Wobbuffet, since these extra puddings were meant for them. Ren tries to guess what Morpeko is eating, but it's impossible to tell, since all you can hear is this. James still says, did you listeners guess what Morpeko was eating? But Ren says that there's no way to tell, and he is then shocked when James reveals the answer. Since Morpeko is now in full belly mode, Team Rocket can move on to the next segment, which is Meowth saying a Tongue Twisters. Jesse reads the tongue twister that Meowth will say this time, which was sent by the strong, rugged Rockman. Now I was immediately like, wait, this sounds familiar. Could it be? And the episode then cuts to Brock, who is camping outdoors. He eats dinner while listening to Team Rocket's show on his radio. Brock cheers because they are reading his message. I definitely did not expect to see Brock in this episode. This really was a nice and a cool surprise. Brock then looks up at the stars and he says that his idol, Princess Number 7, even said his name. He also says that her voice is so lovely tonight as always. Oh Brock, you never change. Also, oh Brock, if only you knew. If only you knew that your idol is someone you know very well. Meowth then says that he will try to say the tongue twister 3 times. The tongue twister is traversing a tunnels with Tornadus, taking a time to rest with Tornadus. Now honestly, I thought that in English, this is not really a tongue twister. But now that I actually had to say it, I realized that it is in fact tough to say fast and without errors. Though it's not as bad as in Japanese. In Japanese, it certainly is one mean tongue twister. While Meowth is trying to say the tongue twister without failing, we do see that Nurse Joy and her Chansey, Officer Jenny in her car, Allister and his Cursula are also listening to Team Rocket's show, which is cool. Like with Brock, I also definitely did not expect to see Allister in this episode, and it is cool that we see that he has a Cursula. Also, you can see the pot that Allister used to make the max soup for Gengar. It is even still on the stove. This is a nice nod to episode 92. After some difficulty, Meowth finally says the tongue twister without mistakes. We then see that Ren, who is still listening to the show, finally finishes typing. Jesse then says that they will announce the listener whose email was the most touching and heartfelt. And this listener is Nervous Swa, which is obviously Ren. This reveals that what he was typing so enthusiastically was an email. Jesse then reads the email, which says, I know some children who have these amazing dreams. One dreams of being a Pokemon master and one dreams of catching every Pokemon and making his way up to Mew. Princess number 7, Mentor Blue Bruce, Head and Nosuke, if you would not mind, could you give them a message? Now this email is not very long, so I wonder why Ren took so long to write it. Meowth says that these dreams are big. James agrees, and he says that the thing about dreams is that the bigger they are, the more worth it they are, and the more exciting they are. Meowth agrees, and he says that he is rooting for the success of the children. James says that he is rooting for them too, and that he hopes that they will rely on Mentor Blue Bruce if they ever run into trouble. Jesse says, I am sure that there will be sad times and hard times ahead, but you can count on us and on Nervous Swa. You better treasure those dreams. Oh, Team Rocket, if only you knew that you were talking about the brat boys you dislike so much. Jesse thanks Nervous Swa, for the message. Meowth then says that Nervous Swa will receive their novelty crown cap badge from the show and a premiere ball via Pelipper Prime once the show is over. So Nervous Swa, ended up getting the premiere ball for his email. Team Rocket then ends the show. The next morning, Professor Cerise is drinking coffee and he is greeted by Ash and Go. Professor Cerise clearly has a Team Rocket novelty crown cap badge on his lab coat, confirming what was already obvious. An overly happy Ren then appears. Go notices that Ren is happier than normal, so Go wonders why. But before Ren can answer, he notices Professor Cerise's novelty crown cap badge. Ren is curious about the badge, but Professor Cerise tries to play it cool and he is like, oh, this is just a normal badge. Now of course Ren knows what this badge is and he says one of the phrases from the show. And Professor Cerise follows along, so they both realize that they are both fans of the show. Professor Cerise says that after Ren told him to listen to radio again, he discovered them, and Ren says that he found them on the previous day. Ren then shows off his premiere ball, revealing that he is indeed Nervous Swa, which was of course obvious. And Professor Cerise realizes that Ren is Nervous Swa. Professor Cerise says that it is only polite if he reveals his identity as well, and he opens his lab coat, which reveals that he has dozens of novelty crown cap badges. I love that he is clearly very proud of his collection of badges. This shows how big of a fan he is of Team Rocket's radio show. Ren realizes that Professor Cerise is that he is a lonely ball lately, which again was obvious. Professor Cerise and Ren then say in unison, while smiling, the closing segment of the show. Ash and Go are confused by what's going on, while Pikachu and Grookey are adorably curious. But Ash says that Professor Cerise and Ren are having fun, so whatever. And I was having fun too. I was laughing a lot here. Professor Cerise and Ren then admire how big of a fan of the show the other is. The episode then cuts to Team Rocket's hideout. They are starting another episode of their radio show. The narrator says that Team Rocket forgot their initial objective of getting new recruits, and they were scolded by Giovanni because of this. But they were not able to forget the fun of hosting a radio show, so they continue to host the show occasionally. Jessie then interrupts and scolds the narrator for talking over her and for not listening to her. The narrator apologizes and he even has sweat drops when he does, but on a blank character bubble since of course the narrator has no form. Meowth says that even a narrator has do's and don'ts. James then says that the narrator can apologize later and he tells the narrator to read the first message of the show. So not only do they interrupt and scold the narrator, but they also make the narrator do what they say. Talk about a lack of respect. Also, this is the final nail in the coffin of the poor fourth wall, which was broken into oblivion in this episode. The narrator obliges Team Rocket's request and he reads the first message. I love that Wobbuffet gets a microphone close to the narrator here. So, the first message is from the radio sommelier. I was immediately like, wait, is this Cilan? It would be pretty cool if this is Cilan, and this official artwork released after the episode aired reveals that yes, Radio Sommelier is Cilan, which is nice. Team Rocket really have a varied and esteemed audience. Also, I love that in this picture, all of them including Brock and Cilan have their badges from the show. Now you would think that they would recognize the logo, especially Brock and the Cilan. But that's the episode. So overall, this episode was very fun and very entertaining. I was honestly not planning to review this episode, because Team Rocket hosting a radio show is not really an episode that is review worthy, and I seriously could have used a break from reviews. But I could not resist reviewing the episode in the end, because I really did end up liking the episode a lot. Certainly more than I expected. Seeing Team Rocket struggle to create a good radio show that is successful and that gets a lot of listeners was something that I could relate to as a content creator. Seeing them persevere and work hard, which allowed them to eventually find an audience, was inspiring, and it motivated me to work even harder. The reminder provided by Ren and Professor Cerise about how we used to get entertainment from media was really nostalgic. It brought some fond memories to me, which is something that I can appreciate. And the love for radio and radio shows that this episode was oozing with was also something that I can value. This episode was also just hilarious. Team Rocket's crazy segments, insane antics, and funny dialogue combined with their complete and utter disregard for the fourth wall, plus Professor Cerise and Ren's fan moment near the end of the episode, ensured that there was never a dull moment in this episode. Instead, I was constantly laughing and having a good time, which made me enjoy the episode a lot. The fact that Brock returned briefly for such a funny segment, and that we got to see Allister, and that we got a reference to Cilan, were just the cherries on top of this marvelous episode. So yeah, overall this episode really was an entertaining ride, and it reminded me that you should never judge an episode by its cover. But that's the video, as always. Leave your own thoughts down in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did and would like to see more like it, then please consider subscribing to my channel. I love Pokemon and I love making videos on both the anime and the games. Also, please consider clicking the links on screen so that you can check out more videos like this right away. Thank you very much for watching, and let's meet again in the next video.